Hey there, little dum dum. Welcome back to another episode of the Dummy Head Podcast. I am your host, the ghost of podcast past, James LaFountain. One thing I wanted to talk about was being burnt out at work. If you have like a full-time job or even a part-time job that is stressful, or it's long hours, or maybe you're not getting along with everybody, it can start to weigh on you. I'm pretty lucky with my job because I really like the people that I work with and I have a great boss. The hours are really long, so the physical side of it is pretty tiring at times. Mainly that is where I think my burnout, if you want to call it that, is coming from. I decided to take the last 3 days off, and I feel like it's been really good for me, just some time to rest and kind of do whatever I want. And I'll be honest, I've kind of just done a whole lot of nothing. I went out and took a little hike up on Lone Pine, it's called, and overlooks the whole city, and that was pretty cool. I got some cool pictures and just went out there by myself. It wasn't a very long hike, so that was good. I've been able to go do the shopping that I've needed to do and take care of things around the apartment and kind of think about topics that I wanted to bring up on the podcast. I've been thinking about starting a separate channel just for like full videos, something that I could actually produce into a video and put research into. So I've been kind of collecting ideas and looking out for stuff, just giving my mind that time to be creative. And I think other than the like physical exhaustion from work, I think that is part of my maybe lack of motivation at work, is because I feel like I'm kind of disregarding a lot of my creative aspirations. And so just having that time just to think about these things, I think it's been really good for my mental state. One of the last podcasts, I actually said that I had finished reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. There was actually a couple chapters left that I didn't read. And so me not really liking to leave things unfinished as far as like stuff like that goes, like books and movies and stuff. Everyone likes a good ending, so I went and read the last couple chapters of that. I think that's the type of book that will take a few readings to really absorb all the different points. But since it's fresh in my mind, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the points that he brought up in that book. The last thing he was talking about was kind of confronting death, and just the fact that I think the one thing that everybody really wants in life is to feel alive and feel like their lives have meaning. Working a day job as a creative person, not to be like dramatic or anything, but there are a lot of times where it feels like what you're doing can be totally meaningless because you feel like it's not really aiding you in getting to where you want to be as far as a creative person. And I feel like creative people are the type of people that can really tend to overthink things and dramatize things and romanticize things too. That's where a lot of the great art comes from, is because creative type people really delve into their feelings a lot. That can be good, but it can also be bad when you're trying to do something that is productive, but maybe not in the sense of furthering your creative career. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because people will have this idea that you can pursue your passions or you can just get a day job. I know you can do both, and I think it depends on a lot of different things. For one, it depends on the creative thing that you're trying to do, and it also depends on the job that you have. Me being someone who wants to do music and video and just art, like drawing and graphic design, it's not really that conducive for me to have a full-time job where I'm working overtime and I'm basically using all of my energy just to get through a 10-hour day, doing physical labor type stuff. Like I said, my boss is a really great person, and we actually had like a pretty good talk before I took these few days off. One of the things he brought up was it might be something worth thinking about to switch to 8 hours a day instead of 10 hours a day. Not just for me, but for the whole crew, and just to see how that would work out. So it was good. It was just good to hear that from him, and know that he's looking out for us. One thing I've kind of been struggling with in my mind is whether or not I should bring up to him that eventually, not anytime soon or anything, but eventually it is my plan to be able to work for myself and do the creative things that I want to do, eventually transition into that out of working a day job. He's a pretty understanding person, so I feel like he would get it, and just me being upfront and honest might be the best route. So I've been kind of holding that inside, so I don't know if that is the best way to go about it. I just didn't want to shoot myself in the foot by telling him that eventually I'm gonna quit. I've been there for about 8 months, and he had just started being general manager around the time that I got hired on. He's been really cool to me, and anytime I need advice on anything that's not work related, he'll do his best to help me out. So I'm really appreciative of that. It's kind of a mentor mentee relationship. I admire that, and I look up to him in a lot of ways. He's really helpful with all the work stuff too. If I ever have a question, he'll come out of his office and try to figure it out with me. It's a really good thing that I got going on there. Part of me is like, I'm willing to stick it out for however long it takes, but just eventually, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it takes to get to the point where these creative things that I'm doing are eventually replacing my day job. I know for a lot of people that might sound, a little delusional or childish to think that you can make enough money off of music or a podcast or by doing art or anything like that, especially in the place that I live where it's kind of working class. There's not a lot of big cities around here. There's not a lot of opportunities for people who are doing anything that's kind of related to that. It's not something people really see a lot, and people aren't used to hearing that from people that, oh, hey, I'm gonna be a musician and I'm gonna do it full time and make enough money to pay my bills. I think that's the first thing people think about is money, and rightfully so, because if you're thinking about doing something full time, that's basically what that means, obviously. Is you got enough money coming in, and you're confident in the opportunities that will keep coming your way to be able to not only do it full time, but to continue to do it full time for an extended period of time. Especially in this field, the kind of construction building field, the people that gravitate towards those positions, for the most part, they're not really artist type people. And, I'm a bit of an outlier in that sense. One cool thing about construction is it does attract like all sorts of different people. There's crazy people, and there's just some wild people that work these jobs. There's a lot of things that I really do like about it. There's plenty of benefits to having a full-time job or a part-time job. But just this job in particular, I feel like I'm really lucky just because of the position I'm in, and the opportunity to grow, and the opportunity to train a whole new crew, because we're pretty short-handed right now, so we're going to be getting some new people in. And so there's a lot of opportunities for me to learn and grow, as a person, and just kind of as someone who is trying to like acquire these skills that I could really take anywhere. The biggest thing going for me in trying to bring this up to my boss is, I'm not trying to get all this training as far as like building skills and, take my resume and take it to just another company. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to transition into something totally different that, I've always wanted to do. It's always been something that I've wanted to do. I've always been like a creative person. I've always drawn. I actually did video production way before I ever did music. Back in my skateboarding days, when we'd make skate videos, and I would do editing, and I'd work on it for hours and just try to make it the best I could. So I've always loved taking some raw like footage, or if it's music, just making something from scratch. just really working at it and finding different techniques and just really learning about it and trying to get better at it. So even though I did do like the video production stuff, it's not like I stuck with it this whole time. And so now I have, years of experience doing that. I'm still basically a beginner. That kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's pretty exciting to me because I have a lot to learn, and I like learning, and I like improving on something that every time I do it, I get a little bit better and it becomes smoother and funner. And then the end product is just better, and I get a better response from people, and then I'm able to continue to do it. And so that is kind of the trajectory that I see myself on. I definitely know the value of sticking to one thing and committing to that. With music, the way I've done it for the past handful of years, definitely take breaks, and there'd be extended periods of time where I wasn't really consistent with it, like every day or anything. And so there was times when I would ask myself, like, man, do I really want this? Because it seems like there's people out there that are progressing way faster, and they're getting more opportunities, and they're working with more people and stuff. You hear that from people, that if you want it bad enough, then you'll find a way, you'll find the energy to keep working. So I've definitely asked myself, do I really want it? Like, even though I'm telling myself that I want it, like, is it what I want? But I think I've definitely proven to myself that it is what I want. Because even though I would like picture myself up on stage in front of a big crowd and stuff, and I would picture the validation of releasing something that gets a lot of attention, that isn't what kept me going. What kept me going is, like I said, working day in and day out at the times that I was really, really focused and honed in on it. Just sitting there for hours and trying to improve on my craft. And I don't think I would do that if it wasn't something that I truly wanted. With the whole like 10,000 hour rule, they say you're not an expert in something until you've practiced for 10,000 hours. I don't know exactly where I'm at in those 10,000 hours, but I've definitely put at least half of that, 5,000 hours easy, just with music and, sitting alone in the studio and, pressing buttons and working just, every beat would be a few hours. Sometimes the song, I think one time I was looking at a file for a song, and it shows you the amount of time that you worked on it, and I think it was 36 hours altogether. It's the same thing to me with this podcast and the ideas that I have for full video production. If it's something that I'm excited about, I can easily sit down and 4, 5, 6 hours will go by. You forget that you have to eat when you're so focused on something. I definitely know for a fact that this is something I want to do. And like I said, I don't think it has to be an either or thing. Just the balance, the amount of time and energy that I've been given to my job, my day job, and then the time and energy that I have left over to try to do the creative things. That might be what is causing the burnout at work, because that's pretty doable for me. If that was the only thing that I was trying to do, was just work my way up in this company and advance in the career of home building or construction, it would be the same thing. I'd be just laser focused on that, and I'd be able to just knock out those 10-hour days super easy. But when I'm trying to split my time and energy between these two things, inevitably one of them is going to start to, I'm not going to be as effective in one of these areas. When the one thing that I do want to do isn't getting enough time and energy from me, I feel like I can't let that happen, and then so my day job is starting to be affected. I feel like the 8-hour days thing might be a good idea, or it might even be good to do 4 10-hour days. That way I could have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. That would definitely give me enough time to work on the music and do the podcast and just kind of do the things I need to do as an artist to get my mind in the right spot, whether it's reading or watching videos, learning from other creators and all that, and just talking to people and getting out of town and just doing other things that will help my creativity. Because right now there's not a whole lot of time. I don't want to sit here and just only talk about the same things. I can talk about my job for a long time, and I can talk about the stuff that I've read or heard from other people. I'm really into, like exploring my own perspective on things, just forming my own opinions on stuff. I don't think that comes just from, hearing a quote in a book or hearing someone else's take on something. I think that really takes a lot of time, like sitting with that subject and researching it. I feel like as an artist, I think it's really important to just have basically time just to do nothing, just to let your mind not really rest, but to just let your mind wander. That's part of the reason why I spend so much time by myself, is because, I'm always thinking about something, whether, I feel like I'm in a funk or I feel like I'm on like a really good train of thought. Either way, I always end up coming upon something that inspires me to act, and then I will create something, and then that creates motivation to keep that ball rolling. So when it's just a lack of energy and time, that can be really bothersome. I took these few days off. I have today and tomorrow off, and then when I get back to work Monday, I am going to bring that up to my boss. I feel like it's a good thing. I might be blowing it up in my head a little bit more than I should. He's been doing this for years, and he knows how it goes with having people come and go. The way a lot of people do come and go, and I've done it in the past too, is where you'll just up and decide kind of out of nowhere that you're leaving. And then whether you put it in your 2 weeks or you just leave, I definitely am not trying to do that, just because of how good they've been to me. Like I said, I feel like it's a good fit as far as the environment and the things that I'm doing. I'm definitely not trying to screw them over by just leaving them hanging, especially when I'm in the position I'm in, where they wouldn't just have to fill a builder position, they'd have to fill a foreman position, which is a lot harder to do. I feel like it's going to be a good thing. We'll see how it goes on Monday, and I'm just hoping it goes smoothly and that they're understanding about it. And maybe switching to 8 hours for even just a little while will give me that time to kind of rejuvenate. Just figure out a better way to look at it day to day when I'm clocking in and clocking out. I'm not trying to blame anybody else. I'm not trying to be like, oh, you guys are giving us too much hours, or you're not paying enough, or any of this. Because at the end of the day, I am choosing to keep working this job. I am choosing my attitude about how I look at it. And so I'm just trying to find the best attitude to show up to work and be effective and not be like a bummer and bringing other people down. I've always been kind of more like reserved or laid back type person, but the way I look at it is like everybody has different energy levels. And sometimes I see people and they're just so high energy, and I'm like, man, how are you like that? I'm just so not like that, where I have to kind of not conserve my energy, but I guess in a way, you only have so much energy throughout the day. So that's where part of me is like, I hope it's not something like health wise. I feel like I take pretty good care of myself, and like I said, I try to get enough sleep and stay hydrated and all that. So mostly I think it's like a motivation thing and just where my mind has been. I hate even talking about it sometimes because I feel like I could just go on and on about being tired at work. It's not really that big of a deal, and it's not really that interesting either. It's just something I'm working through, and I feel like it's just this little hump that I have to get over. There are stories of people who work full-time jobs and then they're starting a business on the side and all that. So those things inspire me and they give me energy. I think part of it is the changing of the seasons. Everything's kind of slowing down, especially in this part of the country. We don't get a lot of sunshine throughout the year, and so it might be that just kind of coming off that summer high where we get a lot of sun. Just making sure I'm taking my vitamins, like I said, staying hydrated, keeping my mind right, reading and ingesting a lot of things that will keep me inspired and just thinking on the right track. I recently picked up a book. I specifically went to this bookstore to look for this book, and I found it, even though it's just a tiny little book. It's called Steal Like an Artist. I haven't started reading it yet. It's a pretty small book, but it's basically about taking inspiration. I'm pretty sure the gist of it is how to steal effectively. Wear your inspirations on your sleeve and wear them proudly, and doing it in a way that it's not disrespectful to the people that you're taking from. And I think people is keyword, because the more people that you take inspiration from, the less likely you are to come across as a copycat. You know, you take inspiration from all these different people and you take the best things that you feel like will add to your style or your perspective. You just kind of mix them all up, and then that eventually becomes your style. I feel like a lot of people, especially artists, they're kind of afraid to take inspiration from people or copy ideas. If they only knew that the people that they're inspired by did the same thing, they were taking inspiration from other people, and there is no such thing as an original idea. It's just the fact that the people don't know where their inspiration came from. I'm excited to read that book, and I'm excited to share that information. And I think another big thing about that book is not being so attached to your own ideas, kind of realizing that you're part of something bigger than just yourself. I feel like things like that will definitely help me and hopefully help other people, because like I said before, you know, I'm so far this has been like a solo podcast and it's just me talking, and you know, I am trying to do my own thing and kind of build on this podcast. But the way I see it is something like a podcast, it really can turn into something that is beneficial for all sorts of people, you know, not just the people listening, but the other people that might get involved. You know, one of my biggest goals has always been to be able to start something and be able to give jobs to people that are kind of in the same position that I'm in right now, just feeling like you're stuck in a dead-end job, or you know, you're going from job to job and you don't necessarily know what you're doing. So I would just love to do that. I would love to be able to, you know, give jobs to my family and my friends and the people who are willing to look at it for the bigger picture and look at it like it's a team. For me, with the music and with this podcast, that's always the vision I've had in my mind. Even though right now I'm the only one doing it, I'm willing to do that for as long as it takes to get to the point where I feel like once people see it working, then they will be a little more willing to kind of join in on it and help out and stuff, and see that same vision that I have. It's hard to do when you're just getting it off the ground. And like I said, especially around here where it's more working class, people just kind of do the normal things, you know, go to school and get a job. I think it's a little bit harder for them to believe in it. So I'm trying to keep that goal in my mind, and however long down the road it is that it's going to take to get there, I don't really mind that, because once I get there, I will be ready. I feel like I'm ready right now. Just me being a little bit older now that I'm in my 30s, you know, I just turned 31. I feel like if I were in that position to actually build a team and get this thing off the ground, I'd be able to look at it a little more maturely and be able to make the right decisions to keep it going long term, be able to maneuver a little bit better and think about it in ways that don't necessarily, not just for selfish reasons. The more I think about it like that, the easier it is for me to keep going and keep, you know, chipping away at it and improving, and hopefully get other people on board. Even right now when I talk to people about it, that's the main thing that I try to get across to them is, you know, I'm not trying to do this just for me. I'm trying to build something that will eventually be beneficial to other people and make it into something that's, you know, greater than the sum of its parts. I know this podcast isn't necessarily anything that anybody is like just gonna come across and fall in love with. It's basically me just kind of figuring things out. It might be a little while before I start to kind of find my groove and be able to present things that are going to be interesting to people who just might come across it. It's almost like I'm learning on the job, doing it in public as well. I'm growing in public. A few years ago, I might have thought that was crazy. Sometimes I still think it's kind of crazy, just like when I tell people in my life that I'm doing a podcast and they go check it out. But I feel like with every single one that I do, I get a little bit better. And, you know, eventually once I start to get these things that are lining up to make for a more, you know, like efficient workflow, and I'm able to get them out easier, then, you know, people will start to believe in it a little bit more. It really, really helps me when other people believe in me. Just like one person says, like, man, I believe you can do that, then that inspires me so much. Just as long as a couple people are tuning in, I'm not really worried about the views and people subscribing. I'm just trying to improve and continue to improve And as long as this podcast is a little bit better than the last one, eventually I will find my groove. I just know once I get that ball rolling, it'll start to naturally grow on its own. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about, looking like a fool, because that is the name of the podcast. I'll look back on some of the podcasts and some of the stuff I'm saying and just kind of cringe at it. That is kind of the point of it, is I'm getting better at speaking and getting better at not second guessing myself while I'm speaking. Kind of getting over that whole thing of like, nobody needs to hear what I'm saying, or nobody cares, or it's not worthwhile or anything. Because I feel like that's something that anybody who starts out doing something like this, they're going to feel that. Every week it's something that I'm kind of struggling with, and then I find a way to overcome it, or like find a different way to look at it. To me, it just comes back to being responsible for yourself and not really trying to blame it on anything else other than, your attitude towards it and the actions you're taking. Try to reach this goal, whether it's my day job or it's this podcast or it is anything that is happening to me or whatever. I'm just trying my best to find the most productive way to look at it, to where I can just keep going and not really stress over these little things that don't really matter. Because, at the end of the day, this podcast really doesn't matter. Nothing really matters except for, the people in your life, the relationships that you do have, and the things that you do have. Always try to be grateful. And, I might go through a funk for a little while. I feel like as I get older, I grow and mature and stuff. Those periods of time get shorter and shorter, and I hold on to those things a little bit less. So like I said, hopefully you guys can see the improvement. If you have made it this far in the podcast, bless your little dummy heart. I love you and I appreciate you. And until the next one, peace.